We had 9 players franchised, I think. So let's run through the list and we talk about like anything that stands out, like if we were surprised by anyone being franchised. So in alphabetical order, I hope Chris Godwin, Marcus Maye, Taylor Moton, Allen Robinson, Cam Robinson, Brandon Scherff, Justin Simmons, Leonard Williams, and Marcus Williams. So what do you think about that list?
Yeah, I don't think there were a ton of surprises. There were a couple that really stood out to me, though. The number one that I was shocked by was the Saints giving Marcus Williams the franchise tag. And that's not a knock on Williams. He's a terrific player. In any normal year, he would be a candidate for the franchise tag. But the Saints were already more than $65 million over the cap. Like, they may have made some small cuts or restructures in recent weeks to work that down into the 50 million range. I'm not really sure, but giving a franchise tag to a safety when you're in that much of cap hell, that's a big risk. They're going to have to do some really creative things to not have to just completely purge their roster of everybody at this point. So I imagine they'll get creative with some restructures to keep them in contender status, at least while they have their current core, because their roster is pretty good outside the quarterback spot right now. Quarterback's just unproven more than anything else. But that was the one that stood out to me as the most surprising. What about you?
Yeah, I thought Cam Robinson being franchised was weird. Like I marked down left tackle as one of the areas the Jaguars had to improve this offseason. And so they re-signed or franchised Cam Robinson, which didn't really make much sense to me. But then I kind of thought about it a little bit, and it made a little bit more sense because, the Jaguars have the most cap space in the NFL right now. So even if they find a left tackle they want to pay a lot of money to, or, they spend an early draft pick on a left tackle, like on top of the second round, or, late in the first round. So they can still do that, given the amount of cap space they have. So from that perspective, it makes sense. Like if they were in the Saints position, or close to the cap, like I could see that would make a lot less sense. So I kind of think this is sort of a hedge to bring back Robinson for on the franchise tag. He's not very good. Like he's not terrible, but he's just not a good player. So I think they need to upgrade. The points you made about Marcus Williams make a lot of sense. Like I didn't think about the financials. Williams is a really good safety, but yeah, if you have the worst cap situation in the NFL, you probably shouldn't be paying that much to a safety. And I didn't think he was going to be back next year. I just assumed he was going to be on the market. Apparently not. I mean, it's nice at least that the Saints are going to be able to bring him back, but you have to think who are they going to get rid of now, because they have what are they, 50 million over or something like that. So they have a lot of contracts to shed now on top of franchising Williams. So yeah, I think you made a great point about that.
Yeah, and maybe they get creative and add extensions for players with void years and all that good stuff to help out the cap, but that just pushes it further down the road. We've already seen the Saints do this before, have Drew Brees push money into future years so that they can kind of build up their team around him. But now that's coming back to bite them now, and it just seems like they're going to just keep trying to push it off until they get to a point where it's they have to cut everyone and start only undrafted free agents because of their cap situation, because they'll be paying a bunch of people who aren't on the team. But we'll see what happens there, but that's going to be something to watch, especially for people looking for cap casualties and trades, because one of the bigger contracts on that team that I don't think has guaranteed money on it, so they could get rid of it and that would just come off their cap books, is Marshawn Lattimore. So if they get to a scenario where it's all right, we need to clear 10 million. Would they trade Marshawn Lattimore if they can get a draft pick for him? I think that's going to be interesting to watch. One more comment on the franchise tag people. The only other thing that surprised me was Washington franchising Brandon Scherff. Again, this isn't about him as a player. I think as a player, you definitely want him on your team. But they franchised him last year as a guard. So the tag price is going to go up, and he was already the highest paid guard in the NFL last year. So I get what they're doing at this point. They just want to keep him on the roster, but they don't want to commit to him long term because he hasn't been able to stay healthy consistently. But they're paying a pretty penny for a guard, and it just seems seems like an odd move to me unless they want to work out an extension while he's on the tag. Maybe that's the goal. But I had thought that they were either going to sign him to an extension or let him walk. So I was surprised they tagged him again.
Yeah, a guard with an injury history. So, I guess that doesn't make much sense too. But keeping him around is just like there's so much upside, especially with potentially Taylor Heineke starting at quarterback for them next year. We'll see what happens, but they're probably going to have an inexperienced quarterback at the helm, and like having great offensive linemen protecting him is going to be important, even if that offensive line is probably going to miss like 4 or 5 games. So I could at least get that. The Cam Robinson thing, it stood out to me the most. I think like Taylor Moton was like another name that like stood out. Like he's a really good right tackle. But like in my mind, he's not even there yet. Even though he is, it's like Taylor Moton, a really franchise tag. But yeah, I mean, he does. I feel like he does deserve it. So it's just an odd name out of the other guys.
Yeah, I feel like we don't hear enough chatter about Taylor Moton. I think it's because we have this like conception that the Panthers have a bad offensive line, which they haven't had a great offensive line for a few years now. But Moton has not been the problem there at all. So I wasn't surprised to see him get the tag. Most of the other ones we kind of had heard the buzz about all throughout the offseason. And Allen Robinson getting the tag is not surprising at all. But I do wonder who's going to be throwing him the ball, because Chicago's in an interesting cap scenario. They don't have a ton of space, and then they have the 20th pick. So they're probably out of range for the first round quarterbacks unless they get lucky. So that's another team to watch where, good on them for keeping Allen Robinson, but they got to get an upgrade at quarterback if they want to compete.
Yeah, for sure. Not draft crappy quarterbacks over good ones. Tony says Kyle Long much cheaper than Brandon Scherff. Speaking of the Bears, Kyle Long's coming back. He retired, and now he's going to be returning to the NFL, which is a little bit of a surprise. I guess final thoughts here. What do you think? What do you think about like Kyle Long? Because like he's always been injured, and he's had a year off. Like, this has to be like a 1-year prove-it deal, right?
Oh, absolutely. You would sign him to a 1-year deal, heavily incentivized. Like, I think he's a solid guard when he's healthy and when he stays on the field. So if you want to build in incentives to make him like, paid in that middle tier of veterans, like go for it. Like I have no problem with that. I would not sign him longer term though, because he's getting up there in age. And, hopefully he's healthy after a year off. But we also have seen guys come back after a year off and just, not be able to work back up into game speed and game shape. So I'll be rooting for him. I actually did not hear that he was coming back. So it's kind of good to hear that he's around, because he's a good player. So I like the idea of signing him to a 1-year deal. I'll be interested to see what team does that.
Yeah, he's a great player when healthy, but he hasn't played more than 10 games since 2015. So hopefully with the year off, he was able to heal his injuries and play, and maybe he can play like a fuller season. Matt says it seems as though the Patriots are destined to bring back tons of former players: Malcolm Butler, Adrian Claiborne, Kyle Van Noy, Jimmy Garoppolo. All those guys are cut except for Garoppolo. So like maybe the band's getting back together here, but not Tom Brady. And I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, I'm kind of really rooting for the band to fully get back together, because I saw Malcolm Butler get cut earlier today, and I was like, they could really just remake their team like the best of their 3 years in the Super Bowl minus Brady, and then you could see like, can they make it back there? And we'll see what happens. But I think if they could bring back Kyle Van Noy and Malcolm Butler and get Jimmy G, I think they'd be probably better for it. Assuming in that circumstance, the Butler would be replacing Stephon Gilmore, who I think might get traded. I think he's probably on the trade block just because he needs an extension, and I don't know if the Patriots are going to be willing to do that given the young cornerback talent they have. So they could sign Butler cheaper and, have him fit in with the McCourty brothers and JC Jackson and all the talent they have there. But I'll be watching those guys closely.
Yeah, for sure. Why not just lower LeGarrette Blount out of retirement? Yeah, that'd be funny. Last question. Thoughts on Justin Britt coming back? Kind of forgot about him. He opted out, right? And then, I just like, he's okay. Like, I feel like he can be potential starting center, like somewhere if the team doesn't have a good situation. But I would not want to rely on him. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think the Texans, signed him to a 1-year deal worth $3.5 million. So, yeah, I think that's what happened, if I remember correctly. And Tony's a Texans fan, I'm pretty sure. So it makes sense that he'd be asking about him. So I like that deal for them. I think it's a low risk, high upside, because Britt was once a really good center, but he just wasn't able to stay healthy. So we'll see what he can do. But I like that deal for them, for the Texans. Especially where they parted with Nick Martin, which I thought was kind of like a why are you cutting him type move, since he had been solid as a starter. But maybe Britt can give them the same production at a lower price tag.
I completely missed that, and then I looked. It was done Friday night. I'm like, why are teams making signings on Friday night? Like, what are you doing? Yeah, I missed that. So I have to post that grade as well. I'm going to post the Levante David grade too. That's about it for this episode. It's kind of a shorter one. I have to get my wisdom teeth out tomorrow morning, so it's going to be an early night. So I'm not exactly looking forward to that. But So do you have anything to add or anything to plug?
First of all, good luck getting your wisdom teeth out. I'm sure you'll do just fine. And as for my stuff, we got a lot of it these days. Over at NBC Sports Boston, covering Patriots news and all sorts of other Boston sports stuff. Also over at NBC Sports Northwest, covering Trailblazers and Seahawks stuff, as well as some other college teams in those areas. I'm also at Sporting News, helping out with some March Madness coverage there too. So be sure to check out all three of those websites. And as always, I'm still covering the Washington football team over at Rigo's Rag. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Kamenker. I'll try to share as much of my content as I can if I remember where I put it all. But have any questions about free agent signings, my thoughts on them, feel free to ask me. I will weigh in when I see tweets about guys signing. Won't see everything out there, but I will do my best to offer my thoughts on everything on there.
Sounds good. I'm at walterfootball.com. We're going to have grades for every free agent signing, every NFL trade. Going to post, like I said, the David and Britt signings tonight. We just updated our 2021 NFL mock draft. It's 5 rounds, so check that out. And we have 2022, 2023, and 2024 NFL mock drafts, plus all of Charlie's content, which is awesome as usual. So check that out at walterfootball.com. And please hit the like button, comment below, subscribe. All that would mean a lot. I forgot to mention that earlier. So please do that. That's about it. And I will talk to you next week.
All right.